Assembly to order. Again, if members on the phone can go ahead and mute yourselves. We're getting a little bit of feedback. Thank you. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Ms. Allard?
Here.
Mr. Peterson? Ms. LaFrance?
Here.
Mr. Dunbar?
Here.
Mr. Rivera?
Present.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Here.
Mr. Constant?
Here.
Ms. Kennedy?
Here.
Mr. Perez-Verdia?
Here.
Ms. Zolotel? Here. Mr. Weddleton?
Here.
I'm just going to circle back one more time. Mr. Peterson? Okay, Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Whittleton.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we have the land acknowledgement. Mr. Bockenstead.
A land acknowledgement is a formal statement recognizing the indigenous people of a place. It is a public gesture of appreciation for the past and present indigenous stewardship of the lands that we now occupy. It is an actionable statement that marks our collective movement towards decolonization and equity. The Anchorage Assembly would like to acknowledge that we gather today on the traditional lands of the Dena'ina Athabascans. For thousands of years, the Dena'ina have been and continue to be the stewards of this land. It is with gratefulness and respect that we recognize the contributions, innovations, and contemporary perspectives of the Upper Cook Inlet Dena'ina.
Thank you. All right, before we get to our business, just for the benefit of the public and the Assembly, I want to just go over the run of show for today. So after I'm done talking, I'm going to turn to the Vice Chair on the phone to make a motion to change the order of the day, to take up the 4 must-do items for today. That's 14G, 14H, 15B, and 15C. And then we will go as far as we can up until 7 or 7:30, and then I'll do a gut check of the members to see if we're comfortable just plowing through and finishing the rest of the agenda. Before, though, we do all of that, we do have a laid-on-the-table resolution for introduction that's set for a public hearing on October 13th. So we need to go through the procedure here to first lay this item on the table, and then second to introduce it, which will just require the first, second, and third. So I'll go ahead and read the title. Members should have this on the phone. You should have it in your email. Mr. Gates recently emailed it to you. And then members here recently got a copy, and I believe a copy is also available for the public. So this is an unnumbered AR, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly appropriating an amount not to exceed $10 million of the area-wide general fund balance to the Small Business Stabilization Program, including eligibility for franchises for those impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Can I get a motion to lay this on the table?
Move to lay on the table.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Would one of the sponsors like to speak to this rationale?
I think I'm in the queue, yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this follows on a conversation we were all having on Tuesday night about trying to get more money to the Small Business Stabilization Program from the contingency fund. Ms. Quinn Davidson, Ms. LaFrance, and myself have been working on it in the subsequent number of days. We've been working with Mr. Gates and the administration to put it in an appropriate form. It was determined that with a resolution and appropriation this size, we would want a public hearing, and so we had to put it today so we could have a public hearing in October. So it needs to go today so we can do the public hearing in October and hopefully get this money on the street and to small businesses as soon as possible. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the motion to lay this on the table? Mr. Weddleton.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm happy to lay this on the table, maybe not specifically. You know, I think it's a little misleading here. On your whereas on line 30, where you say,
So Mr. Whittleton, I think that would probably be more appropriate discussion for the 13th.
I want to change before then, but okay.
I know you want to, but I think it's more appropriate for the 13th. Thank you. I don't... All right, seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote to lay this item on the table.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Perez-Verdia?
Yes.
That motion passes 10-0. It is laid on the table. So next, now, we need a motion to introduce the item.
Move to introduce.
Is there a second? And is there a third?
Third.
Okay, so that item is introduced, and we will have a public hearing on October 13th. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn to the vice chair for a motion to change the order of the day.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to change the order of the day to take up 14G, 14H, 15B, and 15C first, since those need to be passed or not tonight.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this motion? Is there any opposition to change the order of the day?
Wait, it was 15B and C?
14G, 14H, 15B, 15C.
If I would just move to amend that we also take up 15A. There is a member of the public who sat all the way through till midnight the other night, and his license is item 15A, and he is here again. So could we take that up after 15C? And could I get a second, please?
Let me just see if the mover is amenable to changing that motion in such a way. So, Madam Vice Chair.
I am, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the mover and seconder agree. So the new motion is to take up items 14G, H, B, 15B, 15C, and 15A before we go back to 14B.
Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, members may, is there any opposition? Okay, seeing none, then that is approved. So first item we have is item 14G, ordinance number AO 2020-92, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code, sections 26.80.050 and 26.80.070 to increase rates for the solid waste services disposal utility. We don't have anyone to, on the phone to testify. Is there anyone who would like to testify on this item? Anyone at all? Go ahead, Mr. Haberman. Come on up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All I'm going to say is this, very briefly, concerns all the items you're hearing tonight, is this: the fact is, concerned that there's no hard copies of any of these items in the back. This is the second meeting in a row. It happened Tuesday, and now it's happened tonight. So the public's working blind unless they have electronics with them or they made copies before. The only thing back there is the agenda for the meeting. That's it. You can't operate that way, but you are. That's all I have to say, and I wish you had the time to overall scenario of what's happened here. Respectfully, thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. And for the members of the public in attendance, the clerk can make any copies of items that you would like. Just let us know and we can do that. Mr. Whittleton, you had a question on that?
Yeah, just not to Mr. Haberman, but on that, are we changing our policy then on printing, or what's the status?
Yeah.
So through the chair, the clerk's office used to have someone from from City Hall bring those materials over, and those deliveries have stopped during COVID. So we apologize. We're aware of the situation, and we have a new system in place to make sure paper copies get over from now on.
So what are these documents here?
Those are amendments, laid on the table items, agendas. So what Mr. Haberman is referring to is
Right.
the 14s,
No, I
15s.
understand. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony is closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this item?
Mine won't go in.
Ms. Allard?
Thank you. Is there anybody here from Solid Waste Services to testify or speak about the increased fees now the third year in a row?
Mark Spafford is on the line.
Yes, correct.
Hi, you said your name was Mark?
Yeah, it's Mark Spafford, the general manager, Jamie.
Mark, I'm just kind of curious on, the fees keep increasing quite a bit. And I'm wondering why you guys perhaps, it sounds to me that the management as far as budget isn't taking a play in here. Can you tell me how much you're increasing percentage-wise?
Yes, through the chair. This year for disposal, excuse me, we are increasing rates 6.25%.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yes, our rates are increasing 6.25% in disposal this year.
Chair, can I do 2 follow-up questions, please?
Sure.
So one of my questions is, and I don't know, this has been brought to my attention, and so I'm curious. I was told that regardless if you wanted solid waste services or not, that you were required to pay for solid waste service fees, and 2, it's a 2-part question, and 2, if you didn't want a container or a trash can, actually there's 3, that you were required to keep one at your residence anyways, and that you also charge a flat rate regardless of how many people, so say like you had 10 apartments and only 7 users, that you would still charge for 10 apartments. Is that accurate, or can you explain that to me?
Yes, through the chair, yes, of course. So what you're talking about as far as requirement for service, that is our collections utility, which that's the item on the next agenda. We're talking about the disposal utility right now, but just to answer your question real quick, we have a mandatory service area that's defined by our AMC, and everyone within our service area is required to have solid waste services unless it is a service that is needed that we cannot provide. And so typically those services are like, somebody's doing a large construction project, they need a roll-off, we don't offer roll-off service, and we'll do an exemption and allow, a private carrier that isn't servicing within our service area to come in and provide that service. All residences are required to have service if they, they can reduce their size to the smallest size possible to make sure that their bill is as little as possible. And for large apartment complexes like that, they're required to have a dumpster, and so usually it's a dumpster that services, anything larger than a duplex within our service area. But yes, every residence or business within our service area is required to have solid waste services as their provider.
So just for clarification, even if you don't want your services, they're required to pay for your services. And so if they were to take their trash somewhere else, for example, maybe they only have 1 bag a week and they don't want to have a trash can, you're still going to charge them and you're still increasing fees?
Correct, and that's per our
Thank you.
our AMCs.
Thank you. Mr. Slipfoot, were you going to address any of those questions?
I was going to address just broadly in general, as the Assembly is aware, but that Ms. Allard may not have been on the Assembly at the time. This is part of a long-term plan. Rates at solid waste were not increased for many, many, many years, and you're correct that we have raised them for the last couple of years, and the plan is to continue on this path for a few more years. We are still well below the rate of inflation overall, and these rate increases are necessary in order to pay for the reconstruction of the central transfer station, which is ongoing at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
While we're debating the next item, it's okay, we'll just hopefully take care of it now. Mark, if you're still there, would you describe the boundaries of the service area in which the mandatory collection is required?
Correct. It's essentially everything north of Northern Lights Boulevard. And there's some overlap here and there, but to give you like a broad sense, it's everything north of Northern Lights.
But east, how far? Mark, how far east?
Basically to Mountain View. And there's some in Boniface. Again, it just the service line does meander a little bit.
So primarily a way to describe the service area might be the urban areas, the kind of historic urban areas of town.
Correct. It's as defined, in our code, it's the old, city of Anchorage boundary.
Thanks. And maybe sometime in the future, I don't know who might be the best, maybe Falsey, because he's so good at PowerPoints and telling stories, but he could give us a history of why the mandatory service in the downtown core. That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weddleton?
Well, thanks. I think given the obvious strange times we're in, and so many businesses hurting and so on, and then you see, and we get emails on this, government is still taking our money, and it hasn't felt the pain. And, I'm sensitive to that, and I looked at this, and, we're raising our rates in the middle of this pandemic, and it feels bad, but, the reality is, you've got for the single-family service 26 cents a month increase, and that's an increase, but it really isn't that much. For your standard cart, it's 53 cents a month, so these aren't huge increases. So it's, and I asked, I said, what would be the implication if we postpone this, say, even for 6 months, just to get it out of the cloud, hopefully, of COVID-19. And, because, we had agreed a year or two ago to steadily go through these increases, and that the plans for the new central transfer station are based on this, it really is cut close. And even that 6-month delay would put them in peril because they've already made commitments. So we really it's almost like we can't say no because we've already said yes and got the ball rolling on these things. So anyway, I will support this, so it is kind of regretful the way it feels. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question kind of follows, I think, behind Mr. Weddleton's comments, and that is in regard to the timing of this. It appears to me that part of the rationale behind doing these increases right now is in order to have kind of a better financial outlook on the business aspect of the organization. And I think it specifically said something about having a 60 to 90 day operating funds, cash reserves, and also to have a 2% capital reserves for funding the large capital projects. And so even though I know that looks good on paper to have something like that, but my question really is, how critical is it to meet that kind of a specific need? Because then I think it does go back to the idea of whether or not this can be delayed enough. I mean, so again, the idea is how critical is it to just basically have the 60 to 90 day operating cash reserves and the 2% capital reserves? Thank you.
Mr. Spafford, do you want to take that one?
Yes, of course, through the chair. Good question. To answer that, 60 to 90 days is a typical financial metric that is used, and Mr. Slipka can help me out with this if I don't touch on all the high points as far as the financial aspects are concerned, but 60 to 90 days is a typical metric that is used in an enterprise utility such as ours for good business practices, because basically that allows us to make sure that we pay our bills and that we pay our employees, we pay IGCs, whatever the bills we have that come around, we have to make sure that we have the funding available to pay for it. The 2% capital reserves are a good indicator of when something breaks, that we make sure, again, that we have the cash on hand, to repair that compactor that costs $1.5 million lying around, or that we have the cash, for the blowers that help us make sure we're in compliance with our air quality permit, to make sure that that funding is available for us to use to be able to pay for those types of repairs.
Thank you, Mr. Spafford. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could follow up a bit on that, then.
Go ahead.
So I still have the question. It's not so much what these are, it's how critical are they? Again, I'm assuming that there is some kind of operating cash reserve that SWS has right now in play. So maybe it's only a 45 to 60-day cash reserve. But anyway, I'm assuming that there's been an operating cash reserve all along. It's not something that's being newly created. And again, the capital reserve is kind of something to fall back on in case something really awful happens and you have to replace major equipment. So again, the question is this something that has to happen right now in order to make sure that the financial outlook and the financial well-being of this organization continues to function correctly?
Through the chair, this is Mark Spafford. A point that I failed to mention initially when I was answering that question is also because of the amount of debt that we're taking on as part of the Central Transfer Station project, we also have to have certain cash reserves and money available to make sure that we meet the bonding requirements that are going to be required when we flip this to a long-term revenue bond. And additionally, it's good practice across the utility industry to have that 2% capital reserve in case anything does go wrong. And believe me, it's just like COVID. It's like as soon as you're not thinking something's going to happen, something happens. And so it's just good, prudent practice to be able to have that amount of cash available in case something does go wrong.
And then Mr. Slivka, you also wanted to address this question?
Yes, I was going to just reemphasize, as Mr. Spafford said, the real critical piece of here is on line 28, the debt service requirement. So as he said, we are borrowing short-term right now. We're going to convert that to long-term. At that point, we're going to need to be able to meet probably a 1.3 ratio, which means their revenue has to be in excess of expense of that amount in order to satisfy the requirements of the people that are going to buy these bonds and lend us the money in order to complete the building of the Central Transfer Station. And that is really why we need to raise these rates, because if we don't meet that criteria, we can't borrow the money. So it's critical that it happens now, and that actually it has to keep happening for another year or two at least.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Mr. Constant?
Yeah, thank you. And just to put a little bit more perspective on it, the municipality operates its enterprises and utilities independently in that they are supposed to pay for themselves. And so we have established them as independent entities as best as we can. This organization, for more than a decade or about a decade, didn't raise rates because of all kinds of pressures that were abounding. And the decision was made to make a correction to bring expenses and revenues in alignment. If the utility doesn't have enough cash flow to pay for its bills, I guess a question to Mr. Slivka, who is on the hook for expenses that exceed revenues? Should we not collect enough in service fees?
It's a difficult question because these would be revenue bonds, and really what is happening from a legal sense is that the enterprise, Solid Waste Services, is making a commitment when they borrow the money.
Different question. Different question.
I know, I guess I would have to defer to either Kate or Mr. Falsey. I'm not sure if it's a revenue bond that they can actually reach back to the MOA, but I would have to defer to Mr.
In the end, that's my question. Is it the taxpayer who's on the hook for the full faith and credit once we've gone forward with this?
I would have to defer to Mr. Falsey or Ms. Vogel because since it's a revenue bond, it is different from a general obligation bond.
And I'm thinking of the whole package, not just the specific one item, the whole operation.
Bill, are you
To
listening?
the Chair, the Assemblymember Constant, this is Bill Falsey. I'm not sure that we have ever researched exactly what would happen if the enterprise just went bankrupt. I think Mr. Slipka is correct that the bondholders who are holding revenue bonds would only have recourse against Solid Waste Services revenues and not against the municipality generally. Mostly, I would say it is a situation that we've never looked at because we've never intended to encounter it. Having the Solid Waste Services utility no longer be able to operate for lack of funds. It's not what has to happen.
I wasn't going to the nth degree of bankruptcy and insolvency, but should they not be able to pay all their bills, what happens? We pay. I mean, in the end, that's what's going to happen with any of our enterprises.
As a practical matter, that is likely, some version of that may well come to pass. Legally, it may not be strictly required, but practically it is hard to imagine a scenario where an enterprise owned by the municipality unable to pay their bills would be left to stiff creditors if the municipality remains itself a going operation.
Right. So ultimately speaking, if we don't run a prudent entity, then the taxpayer is going to be on the hook for whatever differential that is with legal fees, with settlement fees, with whatever. So to my perspective, it's wise to have each of us who uses the service pitch in a little bit more to make sure that the expenses and the revenues match, even in these tough times, so that the ball doesn't land in the lap of the taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Allard?
Thank you, Chair. I guess I could ask this to Alex, Mr. Slipka. Isn't it possible that when we look at budgets and we really reduce items, maybe sell the garbage trucks at a higher price than at a lower price and stop holding on to them for more than a year and a half, that this could reduce our budget to allow the fees not to be raised quite as much? I understand. I've done a lot of research. That's why I asked the questions I did tonight. Just curious.
For that question, which seems to be more operational, I would actually defer that to Mr. Spafford, who has a better sense of his operation. I don't believe they buy and sell garbage trucks every year, but I would defer that to Mr. Spafford.
Mr. Spafford, can you answer that question for me, please?
Yes, through the chair. I mean, for typical, the garbage trucks that you see collecting garbage and recycling, the typical life, depending on how well they perform and how well they last on the road, which you have to remember that the solid waste industry is the most heavy-duty industrial, it's one of the most heavy-duty and industrial type activities that there are there, that's out there. And so typically our collection vehicles last 5 to 7 years. We're trying to extend that by looking at electric vehicles, which, for all intents and purposes have a shelf life of 10 years just because they have less moving parts. But typically for the diesel type vehicles that we have now that are collecting garbage and recycling, it's a 5 to 7 year process. And we have, say we have 15 to 20 collection vehicles that are picking up garbage and recycling, 6 days a week. We purchase, 2 or 3 new collection vehicles every year. And it's the same thing on the disposal side. Those large tractors that are driving out from the transfer station to the landfill, we also cycle those out every 5 to 10 years as well, just depending on the maintenance that's associated with each one of those vehicles. So they last a lot longer than 1.5 years. However, it's a 5 to 7 year process typically on the Class 8 collection vehicles, and 5 to 10 years on the the tractors that are driving garbage out to the regional landfill from the transfer station.
Thank you. Do you guys actually sell your trucks at auction to go to other waste management companies? Is that correct?
Through the chair, correct, yes. So it happens all the time where we will get, complaints about, a truck driving down the road that looks like an old SWS truck, but isn't actually an SWS truck. But yeah, every year we make hundreds of thousands of dollars off of, selling our surplus vehicles at auction.
Chair, just one last question and I'm done for the evening. Mr. Stafford, I also have just one last question for you. Did you guys purchase, and I don't know for sure, that's why I'm asking you, did you guys purchase, I don't know how many hundreds of $1,000s worth, a garbage truck to display down in the lower 48 at a convention for, do you know or remember the price, or if that's even accurate information?
No, that's not accurate information at all. We didn't buy a vehicle to display at a large waste expo convention. It was actually one of the vehicles that we had purchased that the vendor was interested in us having at their convention, that we agreed to letting them have it on the convention floor before it was shipped to us. So it wasn't like it was an additional expense to buy a vehicle that was going to be shown on the floor. It was just a vehicle that the manufacturer wanted to put in their display at that convention before it got sent to us.
Thank you. Ms. Zalato?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for joining us tonight, Mr. Spafford. I agree with my colleagues that the timing of this feels, unfortunate, but we did make this commitment to bring these rates up over a course of time. But could you inform us and the public what Solid Waste Service is doing to provide relief to those who might be struggling to pay their bills due to COVID, and if that will remain in place even with this rate increase?
Through the chair, yes, that's another great question. We are still going to be providing debt relief for individuals that aren't able to pay their bill. I don't know whether it's luckily or unlucky, but we just haven't experienced too many people calling us to have rate relief or relief from their bills since COVID started. We have had a few, and each one of those that we have had, we have accommodated them, and worked with them to help them to keep their service and not to burden them at this time as far as their monthly billing is concerned, or quarterly billing, sorry. So yes, we will continue to do that and exercise that, because we understand that this is a hard time financially for everyone in the United States, everyone in the world, and we will continue to do that as long as it takes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Perez-Verdia? Mr. Perez-Verdia?
That item is approved 8-1. Next, we have item 14H, ordinance number AO 2020-91, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code, sections 26.70.060, 26.70.070, 26.70.080, and 26.70.090 to increase rates for the solid waste services refuse collection utility. Public testimony is now open on this item. We don't have anyone on the phone list. Would anyone like to testify? Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Eugene Carl Haberman. I live in the Matsu Valley. I follow the public process. And the public process, an appropriate decision made by the governing body, is more like a public interest. First note this. I can't help but notice these two items that you had, one before and this one here, increasing rates. I'm rather confused or maybe alarmed, because when COVID hit, our country as well as the rest of the world, there was actions taken about concerns about let's hold off taking action at disconnects, whether for the utilities. This is part of that. Now, what was not set here, that I don't see anything showing, is the information to show where the status financially is, who has paid, who has not paid, and what has affected the budget on that department. So that's number one. Number two is this. I'd like to read you respectfully. It came from Barbara Jones. At the last meeting, about 9:04 p.m. in the meeting, after I expressed concerns about documents not in this room for the public to see. I'm sorry there were no documents in the vestibule. I didn't know this until you testified. We're looking into this to figure out why this error happened. Our apologies, we are working to fix this. Well, tonight we have a meeting. It's not been fixed. And it's very hard to, and being in this room, to see witnesses, where's the information so people could look at this stuff. Okay? This is wrong, and this is not the norm, but it looks like it has become the norm, with all due respect. And I also would like to say this, is that in reference to what was these items, is you've been dealing with CARES Act monies. And the last item that Tuesday night, you were shuffling monies to pay this, for this, that, moving things around. Well, what I'm saying here, with all due respect, is do you really have a handle of what these items are with everything? Because you are passing CARES Act money, and you're also doing CARES Act money in reference to the muni employees, because I've seen the shuffling dealing with monies. So you're increasing rates here, and I understand what the administration said with respect to the financial soundness of their budget. But the fact is that I think before you do all this stuff, get a clear picture of who needs it and who doesn't need it, and do the right way. And I only have 16 seconds left, and respectfully, thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Before we go on, I just pause for a second, see if we can get a sound issue dealt with. Can you hear us now, folks on the phone?
Yes. Yes.
Great.
Yep.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name's Dustin Sherman, and I'm up here to testify against 2091. As a business manager, I guess, in an industry that's already struggling a little bit, I was here on Tuesday and testified to that. We're already paying like $3,000 a month on electric, and that's struggling to keep the doors open. Not to mention what we're paying with water and all the other utilities that run with that. So an increase in, getting our trash picked up is just another nail in the coffin. So, if you guys really like to see businesses that have been open for 40, 50 years struggle and maybe end up closing the doors, go ahead and do this. But I believe that the CARES money that you guys had received from the from the feds would have been a lot better allocation for this. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question for you, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Weddleton?
Mr. Sherman, thank you for coming. So, yeah, I think we had that kind of discussion going here, and this is actually something that's in a long time coming, because when we made commitments.
Sorry, Mr. Weddleton, if you could speak a little closer. Folks on the phone
I'm sorry.
are having difficulty.
Yeah, sorry.
This is kind
I'm a mechanic too, so it's hard for me to hear you.
Okay. So this is kind of part of a long-term process, because we committed to certain things, the central transfer station and so on, that need these rates to finance them. In this particular one in front of us, it is not the trash can pickup that you're referring to. That was the previous one we just voted on. This one's like if you bring stuff to the dump and so on. They treat them as separate enterprises within solid waste services. So, and then if you might, your business is in Jewel Lake area, is that right?
Yes.
So you would be Alaska Waste in regards to this, or some other carrier. You would not be solid waste services in this case.
That may be accurate, but once things start to get passed and you guys pass one thing, what's going to keep the other utility companies from saying, okay, we're going to start increasing rates here, and here? I mean, we're already like literally at less than 50% of what we have. So, you know, the owner that I work for is extremely concerned that that stuff's going to start going up.
Yes, all right, it's probably true, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony is closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have this amendment in writing, but I would like to move to amend Section 3. The ordinance shall be effective on July 1st, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Ms. Kennedy, do you want to speak to it?
Well, just the idea that if we can extend this a little bit past the immediacy of dealing with COVID, I think we could give people a break in that respect. And I don't have an idea of when they actually want to refinance the debt on this, but it seems like putting it out 6 months would probably not be detrimental. So I'm just asking that we give a little bit of additional time before this kicks in. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to hear from either Mr. Slifka or Mr. Spafford on the impact of a 6-month delay.
Through the chair, this is Alex Slifka. 2 points. We are planning on going to the market next year, and this delay would probably impair our ability to get to the debt service ratios we need in order to borrow the money. So I would not like to see this changed. I would mention, as has been said before, these changes are very minor. The change to an individual person is on the order of 75 cents to $1 something. And we're going to have to go to the market next year and probably borrow somewhere close to $100 million. And if we don't have the debt service coverage ratio, we're not going to be able to do that, and that would be a huge challenge. So the request that these go into effect on January 1 is one we would like to continue to see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I ask an additional question if you don't have anybody else in the queue yet?
Oh, sure. Go ahead, and then I'll go to Ms. Zolotel after you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So my question is actually for Mr. Slivka, and that is, Mr. Slivka, if we were to use some of our fund balance in order to help offset whatever additional financial stability we needed to show for that debt to be given the kind of rate that we're looking for, is that a possibility? Is there something within the municipal funds that actually could be used to help in that situation prior to getting that funding necessary for the debt? Oh gosh, now I lost the word on it, sorry. But anyway, hopefully you're getting the gist of my thought is there a way that if we have to prove that we need some kind of debt criteria to be met in order to get the right rates, is there a way we can use other funds within the municipality to do that on a temporary basis? Thanks.
Yes, through the chair, and I think this reflects what the conversation that Mr. Falsey and I were having earlier, is that these are revenue bonds and they specifically look only to the revenue net of expenses of the solid waste utility, which is a separate and distinct enterprise. And so I think, as Mr. Falsey said, it would be very difficult for us to, in some way, move taxpayer money into the enterprise. It's not something that we're designed to do. The enterprises are designed to stand on their own. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Zolotel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for Mr. Spafford related to the amendment and overall. Is the COVID-related ability, or I guess the ability of solid waste services to work with customers due to COVID, does that also extend to commercial customers?
Through the chair, great question. Yes, it does.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
Thank you. And again, just to refresh that point, Mr. Spofford, what I heard you say earlier was that you're not finding a heavy press for applicants for help under that. Can you give us a sense of kind of scale or what kind of pressure you have seen from folks?
I mean, it's a handful. I'm sorry, through the chair, it's a handful. It's not that many. It's not enough to concern me that our revenue projections that we had, say, for this year are going to be impacted that significantly because of COVID.
Thank you. Mr. Weddleton?
Well, thanks. So, just to, and Mr. Spafford, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in our education over the last few years on this, the huge cost that we face as a city a few decades down the line is replacing the landfill. And if we can get to delay that as long as possible, or actually never have to fill it, we save vast amounts of money. So the changes at the central transfer station are expensive, but they are to save vastly more money by not filling up that landfill. Is that kind of the big broader thing? So we're paying a little more now to save vast amounts later, and that's kind of what I've been carrying around from what we've heard in the last couple of years. Is that legitimate?
Through the chair, you are correct, Mr. Welton. We're estimating that with the construction of the new central transfer station, we're extending the life of the landfill by 20 plus years. And that's just based on conservative estimates, because what that does is it allows us to give us the space that we do not have now to divert a significantly greater amount of material from the landfill that would otherwise cause it to fill up more quickly. And like I've said, on my soapbox every time you guys probably see me, is that, once ARL is filled, we have nowhere else to go. And once we have nowhere else to go, the pricing for disposing of material increases 4 to 5 times. And just to reiterate how our rates compare to other entities that are, near us or peer groups down in the Northwest, I mean, for instance, the Matsu Borough, their per ton tipping fee at their landfill is twice what ours is right now. And if you look at how our rates compare to, Fairbanks and other peer utilities in the Northwest, we're significantly less on a per ton disposal fee than they are. And not that says that we should increase our rates. It's just kind of relative to how we haven't had our rates increased in a long time and how we have performed efficiently to try to make sure that we keep our rates as low as possible for the residents of the municipality.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote.
The amendment.
On the amendment, yes, that is true. That's what we're on.
Ms. LaFrance?
No.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
No.
Mr. Perez-Verdia?
No.
That amendment fails 9-1.
Mr. Chair, I wasn't asked for my vote.
Apologize. My apologies, Ms. Kennedy.
I vote yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that amendment fails 9-2. We now have the main motion before us. Any further discussion? Seeing none, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes?
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Perez-Verdia?
Yes.
That item passes 10 to 1. Next, we have item 15B. Emergency Ordinance Number EO 2020-6. An emergency ordinance of the Municipality of Anchorage providing financial resources for capital expenditures required to address and repair critical damage to municipal infrastructure caused by the Point McKenzie earthquake by appropriating an amount not to exceed $12,500,000 from an interfund loan from the Area-wide General Fund to the Disaster Recovery Fund as a contribution and appropriating said contribution to the Disposal Utility Capital Improvement Projects Fund, all within the Solid Waste Services Department for the Anchorage Regional Landfill Shop Warm Storage Administration Building Replacement Project, and approving a temporary exception to the unreserved fund balance designation policy for the Municipality of Anchorage, and providing a plan for future reimbursement of such appropriations. We don't have anyone signed up on the phone. Would anyone like to testify on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony is closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Ms. Allard?
It's probably very simple. Not sure who wants to ask it from the or answer from the administration. Did we weren't getting any type of FEMA relief for any of this, or did we already do that and this is the 25%?
Through the chair, Alex Slivka. It's a little bit more involved with that. This, unfortunately, we have been, for lack of a better word, run around by FEMA for now almost 2 years. This was damaged in the earthquake. We are now trying to finally get FEMA to let us replace it, but we need to move forward. So this is in the same vein of this is the money it's going to take for us to rebuild this facility, and then we are going to ask FEMA for reimbursement.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Presberdia?
Yes.
That item is approved 11-0. Next, we have item 15C, Emergency Ordinance Number EO 2020-7, an emergency ordinance providing financial resources for labor, supplies, and other expenditures required to address municipal response to coronavirus disease 2019 by appropriating an amount not to exceed $5 million from an interfund load from the Area-wide General Fund to the COVID-19 Fund, approving a temporary exception to the unreserved fund balance designation policy for the Municipality of Anchorage, and providing a plan for future reimbursement of such appropriations. Public testimony is now open on this item. We don't have anyone to testify on the phone. Would anyone like to testify on this item? Welcome.
I'll be brief, really brief. My name is Eugene Carl Averman. Okay, so when you go to the original agenda that you sent out, reference to this item, okay, 15C doesn't even exist. What's happened, the public doesn't know. You got addendums laid on the table, and you got a situation in the back where there's no hard copies for the public to see. So this is not right, with all respect, and I don't have to say anything more, but this has created a fast-track scenario where the public is going blind to what you're doing. And I remind you, if it was an addendum, it would have been a Friday. If it was laid on the table, that would have been Tuesday night. Okay, so you pass these things without a clear conversation with the public because they're unclear of what you're doing. Thank you with all due respect.
Thank you for your testimony. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony is closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Weddleton.
Thanks. So this is an emergency order. Is it required that we approve it or not? The EO?
It's an emergency ordinance.
Ordinance, okay. Thanks.
Through the chair, there's a difference between emergency orders and emergency ordinances. Emergency orders are issued by the mayor. Emergency ordinances are a power of the assembly. What it means to be an emergency ordinance is that the money is possibly taxable. It's not subject to the tax cap. It is the way that most emergency provisions are funded during an emergency, but that is still an appropriation power of the assembly.
All right, thanks. Yeah, the EO over the last 7 months has taken another meaning to me, so now I've got it. Appreciate it.
Ms. Zolotel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These funds, am I correct, are eligible for reimbursement through FEMA? Nodding heads, yes. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a question, but I didn't hear the response to Ms. Zolotel's question, so could her question and the answer be repeated, please, and then I'll ask my question. Thanks.
Through the chair, the question was whether the money that's being approved in this emergency ordinance is reimbursable by FEMA, and the answer is yes, and the intent would be absolutely to seek FEMA reimbursement.
Okay, thank you. So my question, though, is in regard to if we approve this today, does that mean that this will automatically then begin to be factored into the budget as we begin the budget process this month? Thank you.
Through the chair, this is Alex Lifka. The answer to that is no, in the same fashion that the funds that you appropriated in the same fashion for the earthquake were not included in the budget process because it was assumed we would get FEMA public assistance reimbursement. We're going to take the same approach with these funds to get reimbursement from FEMA.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Slivka. That helps. And then I'll just maybe ask one more question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
And that just kind of goes to kind of into the future then. At what point do we decide that we won't be getting the reimbursement that we thought we would and it would have to become a budgeted item? How long do we wait to get that answer or the actual funding? Thanks.
Through the chair, it's our best estimate. We're submitting for this, for the vast majority of this in the next couple of weeks, and our best understanding is it's roughly a 4-month process. So I think early into next year, we should have either the money or a very good idea of when that money will show up. But we expect it to get it back hopefully before the middle of 2021.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Slivka. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Allard?
Thank you. This is to Mr. Slivka. The last time I spoke to FEMA, state FEMA, they said we hadn't, and I could be wrong now because it's been a few weeks, that they hadn't received anything from the municipality asking for reimbursement. Have we sent something to the state for reimbursement?
So through the chair, where we are exactly today is we have spent roughly $15 million and we have another $15 million encumbered, which is why we're asking for this additional money. We have, I believe the term has been pre-obligated for roughly $4.5 million, and we are getting ready to actually submit receipts for that money, and as well submitting in the next couple of weeks, going through this pre-obligation money for the rest of the money that we have spent right now. So we can only ask for the money we have actually spent, not the money that we've also obligated.
Okay, so we spent money several months ago, and we're just now asking for reimbursement?
Through the chair. So the process for gathering the data and then submitting for reimbursement is complex. So we had initially submitted for pre-obligation of $9.5 million, and that was received several months ago. And so, yes, you're correct. We are just now gathering the information in order to submit for the expenses that we have occurred.
I would just like to encourage the administration, because I used to work at Department of Military Veterans Affairs and understand clearly how FEMA works, that when we do have those receipts, that we turn them in a timely manner so we don't take money from where it could be used somewhere else. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Perez-Vardilla?
Yes.
That item is approved 11-0. Next, we have item 15A, resolution number AR 2020-347, resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly setting public hearings for the first-time renewals of and approving the renewals of municipal marijuana licenses for retail establishments Catalyst Cannabis Company, number M23821, King Street Cannabis Company, number M20983, and manufacturing establishment Secret Garden Cannabis, number M12769, stating the Assembly's...
Waive reading.
Thank you. Public testimony is now open on this item. We don't have anyone to testify on the phone. Would anyone like to testify in person? Welcome.
Good evening, Assembly. Thank you for taking the time tonight. My name is Niall Williams, N-I-A-L. In response to Resolution AR 2020-347, at this time it is not reasonable to approve any more marijuana licenses. I know that the community is relying on these tax dollars at this time. However, this is causing an erosion of morality in our community. So we should not be renewing any more marijuana licenses until all the churches are opened to full capacity and we stop the nonsense with the closures of schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony is closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this item?
Trying.
Mr. Constant.
Thank you. Mr. James Thornton is in the audience here tonight. He sat through 7 hours of meetings Tuesday and is here again. And I can speak to a pillar of morality in our community who is operating a business in a very tough part of this town, who has dedicated his life to cleaning up one corner of a very hard place and has brightened and cleaned, and as soon as he's done here, running over to the executive board of the community council of the neighborhood in which he operates his business, on which he is an elected member. And so these businesses are proving to be good neighbors across the board. When they aren't, we have processes to assure that they get in line and conform. If they don't, we have processes for that too. But the experience of the man in the room tonight, who I would push and lift up as an example of who we want in business in our community, argues for approving all of these licenses. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Allard.
The gentleman you mentioned, Assembly Member Constant, said he was in the room. Can he come up for a minute just so I can ask him a couple questions?
Sure.
Hello, James Thornton, Secret
Hi.
Garden Cannabis.
Thank you. Not totally in favor of cannabis, but it's legal, so this is where we go and why I always vote yes, because we go through a legal process, right? Have you, and I appreciate everything that Mr. Constant said about you, have you received any complaints or anything? How is it going in your neighborhood with your cannabis store?
Thank you for asking, Ms. or Mrs. Allard? Miss Allard, thank you, and through the chair. It's quite an interesting time to be a business owner in Anchorage. I appreciate the words. I was raised a certain way by my family, and that's the way that I live my life, regardless of what business I'm in. I do advocate for the destigmatization of cannabis on all levels for all of our licensees in this industry, and understand that it is not an industry that all people agree with. However, it was voted in by the majority and voted in subsequently multiple times when people had already put their lives work into this and actually faced potentially pre-COVID, potentially losing their businesses because of certain campaigns asking to shut us down. So it is a hard process. As far as complaints, Fairview is, you have to excuse me, Fairview is a community that has a lot of challenges, as you all know, and I don't need to go into more details on that currently. However, they are the community that we set out to provide safe access to product for. And I would like to say that they are our committed customer base, and we deal with a lot of them every day. As far as your question, let me get back on track. We have not actually had a lot of complaints. I handle everything myself. My staff directs all things to me, especially complaints. Anything negative comes to me and I handle it myself personally, especially externalities of our neighborhood, which Chris mentioned, as you all know. And I would like to say that we've asked for CARES Act funding for porta potties. I'd like to just throw that in there because it seems like the right venue. And that's, you know, for the whole of Anchorage, because people do fan out into Anchorage from our area. So, but we did have one complaint, and I've subsequently and continue to work on upgrading my filtration systems, because that's the law, that we don't have a smell. And it's very challenging for all business owners to follow these rules. But we do it because, you know, we want to be above board. And I do also feel that by providing safe access to product, especially now with COVID, we are taking a lot of potentially dangerous business interactions and transactions off the street, giving people a safe place to come buy product that a lot of them really need. It has a lot of values and benefits that we're not allowed to discuss by state mandate, and I understand, you know, the federal issues, but at the same time, people need this product, and we continue to provide product to them daily, following the guidelines of the state and local government. And again, I haven't had that many negative complaints. I've met all my neighbors through the public process. I walked around and knocked on all the doors, talked to everybody that had a letter in their hand. It was the day that they were delivered, and I had one couple. They said they would never be able to get behind our industry, and they made some comments about, you know, customers potentially affecting neighboring businesses. And all I could tell them was, you know, I'm going to personally run this business and watch over our customers. And I do it every day, and I pay attention to the cameras, and they report everything. We have.
Sorry to interrupt, sir, but did you have any other questions, Ms. Allard?
I wanted to say something. As much as I appreciate when my fellow assembly members speak kindly of the public, you coming up here and testifying brings it to the forefront, and it's more compelling. And I wanted your voice to be heard so that we know what you're doing for our community, even though I might not always agree. I appreciate it, and thank you so much. Thanks.
Apologies for going on.
Thank you.
My pleasure. You're welcome.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes?
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Presberdia?
Yes.
That item is approved 11-0. Going back on our agenda, we are now on item 14B, ordinance number AO 2020-54, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly to reauthorize certain boards and commissions by amending the sunset provisions in Anchorage Municipal Code sections 4.60.270 and 4.90.010. Public testimony is now open on this item. We don't have anyone on the phone list. Would anyone like to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony is closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Perez-Verdia?
Yes.
That item is approved 11-0. Next, we have item 14C, Resolution Number AR 2020-307, a resolution approving an administrative agreement AA number 2020-01 between the Municipality of Anchorage and the Teamsters Local 959, agreeing to a Vera Whole Health Clinic Health Assessment Incentive. Public testimony is now open on this item. We don't have anyone on the phone list. Would anyone like to testify? Welcome.
In response to AR 2020-307, this is socialized medicine. They're taking the Teamsters local union, they're trying to take over our medicine, they're trying to kill our kids. They're literally trying to put the kill switch in all of us to mandate that we're going to have to be vaccinated against our will. If you look on the Teamsters local website, you'll see it on there. As well, Vera Whole Health Clinic, they actually take funding from Chinese Communist Party sources. They are a terrorist organization acting in our community. It is time that we stop socialized medicine. This is out of control. Do the people on this assembly body even care about kids? How many of you even have children? I don't have any children, but I know wholeheartedly that I don't want to give up the sovereignty of choices of my child to some unelected bureaucrat that's standing in a health department. We sold the sovereignty of choices down the river, y'all. It's time that we take back medical choices into the strict provision of our jurisdiction. You give it up to socialized medicine, here's what happens. It's going to be just like when you're waiting for the rental assistance checks at the Lutheran Social Services. You're going to have to wait 3 weeks for an appointment. If you want to get something done, as simple as an antibiotic, you're going to have to wait for 3 weeks to get a doctor's appointment. If you need surgery, you're going to have to wait months. They're going to start to ration medicine. They're going to be killing the old people. If you need a hip replacement and you're 60 years old, sorry, you're out of luck. We choose that you're not relevant. Your life is not worth it. The same assembly that purports to support Black Lives Matter, which separates and doesn't state that all lives matter, or baby lives matter. We're not out there protesting at Planned Parenthood where they're canceling the lives of unborn babies. Oh, but they provide other services, right? They coach mothers on how to kill their babies. And they coach our kids on how to become transgender.
If you can keep this on topic, please. Thank you.
This is very on topic, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the correction, but when it comes to issues of public health and our children, this is directly on topic, sir. Thank you. The whole city is mobbed up. We're going to RICO you all out of here. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony is closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Mr. Constant.
Thank you. I just would like to ask the administration to come up soon with kind of an update on utilization and effectiveness of the program. I think it's been in effect long enough to get an overview of how it's worked and where it's going. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Perez-Verdia?
Yes.
That item is approved 11-0. Next, we have item 14D, Resolution Number AR 2020-308, a resolution approving an administrative agreement between the Municipality of Anchorage and the International Association of Firefighters Local 1264 regarding a collective bargaining agreement extension. Public testimony is now open on this item. We don't have anyone to testify over the phone. Would anyone like to testify on this item? Welcome.
Red Alert Public Service Announcement. Niall Williams, represent 1776 Alaska. In the current collective bargaining agreement, they're seeking to sell firefighters' jobs away. They're going to cancel all the firefighters. They're going to install sprinkler systems in your homes. They're going to force entry into your home against your will. Now, I know that under the U.S. Constitution, our homes specifically are protected against unreasonable search and seizure. That's a natural law. That's a substantive right.
Sir, if you could keep this testimony on topic, please.
This is
Thank you.
exactly on topic, sir. This deals with our U.S. Constitution.
Sir, I'm asking
So
you
yes, it deals
twice
with...
to keep this on topic, please.
It's exactly on topic, Felix Rivera. Please don't correct me and shut off my mic again and censor me. I don't appreciate that. The firefighters' local union, you're selling the jobs down the river. This is just going to bloat the costs of the fire department. It's going to cause unreasonable searches and seizures. They're coming into your homes. They're going to install these sprinkler systems.
I'm going to have to end your testimony because you're not keeping it on topic. Thank you.
So you're censoring me again. Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to testify? Anyone at all? Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. My name is Eugene Carl Haberman, Alaska resident for over 42 years, resident in Anchorage for about 20 years, and currently resident in the Valley. Now, I'll definitely be on topic, okay? As you know, I follow things very closely. Number one, I strongly oppose this labor agreement this time, increasing costs. But in fairness to the parties in this labor agreement, I also oppose any labor agreements for the next 12 months approved. Why? We're in COVID time. You're dealing with a situation. Where is the money going to come from? We also, there's no doubt, Alaskans are losing their jobs. Others wondering if they're going to get their jobs back. Businesses are going out of business, so forth. This is not the time to approve a labor contract increasing costs. With all due respect, it's not sending a good message to those who are feeling it really hard right now. And when I say labor contracts, I'm talking about government labor contracts, and this is one of them. You a few weeks ago, went into an executive session dealing with labor contract with the police. This is not a time for negotiations. This is a time for all parties in government to come together and say, let's put a moratorium on the situation for 1 year. So we know where we're going. Because right now, it's unclear what the future is, 1 month, 6 months, or 7 months, or a year from now. And remind you is, you rush through COVID money, and then you're backtracking and changing situations. But on this deal right now, it's sending a bad message that you are saying that those are more important. And I'm not saying the firefighters are not important, not at all. I credit what they do. It just falls into this contract. I'm also concerned with the teachers asking and threatening a strike out in the Valley. This, and where in America is the word strike said by anyone? And that also concerns me. Because any government entity that threatens or even says, if you don't accept this, we're going to go on strike. Now, these parties didn't say that, with all fairness. But I also end with this concern, too. Before you went into negotiations on this, or any labor negotiations, you should have had a public hearing of the existing contract. That way you heard from the public, and then you went into negotiations. That didn't happen with the police deal, and it's a pattern that even City of Wasilla doesn't do it that way. Okay? I'll close with my time, and thank you, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you for your testimony. Would anyone else like to testify? Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. William Topel, T-O-P-E-L. I concur with some of the sentiments from the previous testifiers. If this is going to increase money spent by the municipality, during this time when all of a sudden uncertainty due to the COVID craziness going on, then I'm going to be against this. We've got COVID impact money, CARES Act money that should be paying for some of these things. But generally, collective bargaining agreements go into your budget, okay? And as a taxpayer here, I'm struggling to hang on to my place in this town. So if this is going to increase our budget in any respect, then I'll be against it. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Would anyone else like to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony is closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Weddleton.
Oh, thanks. It's always nice to be able to give Mr. Haberman what he wants, because he said put a moratorium on it. And that's essentially what this is. It's a one-year extension instead of the 3-year or longer because of COVID. They didn't have time to deal with it, so they said let's just essentially extend what was there before. So Mr. Haberman, you got what you wanted. And actually, slightly off topic, I suppose, but this last 2 items have showed the dangers of not having hard copies out front, because we've had a speaker come up and he's forced to extrapolate fairly wildly from the title because he can't see that these items are fairly straightforward and simple. And so I know you're working on it, but it is important to have something so that they know it's, the last 2 have been very simple, and so thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Presberdia?
Yes.
That item is approved 11-0. Next, we have item 14E, ordinance number AO 2020-94, an ordinance authorizing a revocable use permit on a portion of Lot 7, Section 4, T12NR4W between the Anchorage Waste and Wastewater Utility and Chelcho Partnership, DBA Verizon Wireless. Public testimony is now open. We don't have anyone to testify over the phone. Would anyone like to testify? Welcome.
Thank you. Niall Williams, N-I-A-L. I'd like to apologize for my previous tone of voice being too loud. In response to 2020-94, is there a part in this bill that will decide how much money will be held in a lockbox for Verizon Wireless held by the municipality in escrow to clean up any destructive practices that come out of the production of new towers that are 5G? Also, we need to put reverse osmosis filtration in the Anchorage water supply. They are putting poisons into the water, not just fluoride, hexavalent chromium. Runoff from the hospitals is going in there. Runoff from various industrial productions is going in the water supply. If you don't have reverse osmosis in your house, you're going to start to get cancer. Have you all been feeling that pain? Have you been having that trouble sleeping at night? Are you losing your hair? That's why. Now these 5G towers, they have waves. These waves, they're the actual wavelength of the wave. It goes through your organs.
Sir, if you can go ahead
This
and
is
keep it
directly
on
on topic, Felix.
No,
we're talking
sir.
about a wireless tower.
When I am speaking, please, I need you to not speak. I need you to keep this on topic, please. Thank you.
We're talking about wireless towers. Out of those wireless towers come waves. Those waves are microwaves. They're radioactive. These 5G waves, they actually go through your body. They destroy you. They destroy your body's organs down to the cellular level. They kill your DNA. This is the actual godlike kill switch that has been installed internationally. They're trying to kill the human race, the entire human race. using 5G towers, forced inoculation, all through this fake public health crisis. And the municipality sits up there and they're staring at their phones. I appreciate y'all. But this is what we're talking about right here. Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility, they're poisoning you on a daily basis, a micro level. They're literally poisoning you, you and your children. Not just propagandizing, but literally down to your cellular level, destroying you, destroying your DNA, destroying your bodies. Now I know, y'all think I'm crazy, but go out there and do your own research. Go out there and look at the data. Go out there and look at what 5G really is. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony is closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Presverdia?
Yes.
That item is approved 11-0. Before we move on to the next item, just want to note for the record that the clerk's office has printed off copies of all of the remaining items, and they are in the back if any members of the public would like to take a look at those items. Next, we have before us item 14F, ordinance number AO 2020-95, an ordinance authorizing a disposal of an electrical easement on a portion of Eklutna Water Treatment Site, Tract A, between Anchorage Water...
Waive reading.
Thank you. Public testimony is now open on this item. We don't have anyone to testify on the phone. Would anyone like to testify? Welcome.
Thank you again, Assembly members. Niall Williams, N-I-A-L is the spelling of the first name. Once again, this is actually a government takeover of some electric grid. So it's a full uptake of the municipal government on your electrical supply. Also, another key component is that we just sold out to Chugach Electric. It's a socialized electrical program, Chinese Communist Party style. The Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility. When's the last time that we did a study on the water quality in this town? Does this municipality have, does the assembly body have any knowledge of that? Have you looked at a water report lately? Are they good? Because I've been seeing some red that's starting to like accumulate at the bottom of my shower. I don't think it's just old pipes. You should look into the ownership structure of Matanuska Electric Association. You follow the money when there's criminality, and you will find the source of where it's coming from. People in this community are waking up. There's a lot of money out there investigating. Be cautious. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony is closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Constant.
Yeah, thank you. I would just offer for the public's benefit, go to awwu.biz and you will find the 2020 water quality report for your edification.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Presverdia?
Yes.
That item is approved 11-0. Next, we have item 14I, ordinance number AO 2020-97, an ordinance designating as deteriorated area the Central Spenard area from the Anchorage 2040 land use plan and setting the
Waive reading.
Thank you. Public testimony is now open on this item. We do have one individual to testify over the phone, Mr. Tyler Robinson.
Hello.
Hi, this is Felix Rivera. I'm looking for Tyler Robinson.
Hi, Felix. It's Katie Bisson. Felix?
Yes. Yeah, I'm looking for Tyler Robinson.
Oh, is it for testimony?
Correct.
Oh, sorry. Okay, here you go.
Thanks.
Hi, this is Tyler.
Hi, Mr. Robinson. This is Felix Rivera. You're here with the Anchorage Assembly. We are on public testimony for AO 2020-97 regarding the designation as deteriorated area for the Central Spenard area. You have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Tyler Robinson. I submitted some comments in writing. I simply wanted to say that my employer, Cook Inlet Housing Authority, owns a significant amount of property in that area. We are supportive of the ordinance to declare the area deteriorated. I do think that it will potentially help incentivize some additional development in the area, and I do think that it meets the definition of deteriorated per AMC 12. And with that, I'll just be open to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question for you from Mr. Constant.
Hi there, Tyler. Christopher here. Just for the body's benefit, would you explain how this designation will help you engage more effectively in providing affordable housing for Anchorage?
Sure, Mr. Constant. I think it's yet to be determined if we will for sure submit an application for deteriorated property, but it is an option. We have pursued a similar approach when we developed in the Muldoon Creekside Town Center. Was a similar sort of determination, and we were able to make the sort of application for deteriorated property. When we develop our affordable housing developments, there's often anywhere from 7 to maybe 12 different funding sources that's required to go in to put those projects together. And so with if we were to have granted a tax abatement for a period of years, we'd be able to monetize that into an additional funding source that would then help basically dig into the gap. Any development that would happen in this part of Spenard is incredibly challenging. There's a number of basic public infrastructure that's lacking that we would be required to build as part of our development. We're also dealing with some challenging soils conditions and a variety of sort of costs that have fundamentally already been spent to remediate the parcels. So like I said, every little bit helps, and I think most importantly, I think also because it would be available to other property owners, it could help. We're not going to be able to do everything ourselves, so anything that's able to help additional property owners develop would be I think, a good thing in that area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Allard?
Thank you. What's the caller's name again, Mr.?
Tyler Robinson.
Hi,
Yep.
Tyler. There you go. Thank you. I think this is a great project, and I think this is something that we really need to kind of spread throughout the entire city. So for you taking this on and being on board with it, we appreciate what you're doing for the community. Thanks.
I appreciate that comment, and you know, like I said, we've developed in all different parts of town, including Eagle River, and I think when we take on some challenging parcels, I think it's wonderful to, I think, get acknowledgement and really partnership with the municipality to help really put forward those developments that I think we all recognize are needed.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes our phone testimony. Welcome.
Thank you again. Niall Williams. In response to 2020-97, this is in direct violation of Article 1, Section 1 of the Alaska State Constitution. The Cook Inlet Housing Authority is part of a money laundering scheme. As Tyler said on the phone, he needed to use, quote, 12 different funding sources to make this happen. 12. The Cook Inlet Housing Authority, to put this over the top and make it federal, also deals with the housing and urban development from the federal government. That's what makes this a RICO application. The municipality will use eminent domain as under federal statutes and state statutes to come into areas. They are using this as a trial to try and take your homes, to reclaim them for the municipality's purpose, and be able to have other people move into them against your will. It's also protected under the fact that we cannot quarter people in our homes. That's also guaranteed under the U.S. Constitution against our will. The reinvestment focus area, as detailed through this municipality's plan for the future, is actually a criminal conspiracy. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony is closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ms. Quinn Davidson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to thank Mr. Robinson for testifying, and also Mr. Brooks, who is likely in the audience. And, this project would really contribute to all of the growth we've seen in Spenard, and I think it's really a good thing for the community, and also the potential for additional affordable housing is something we really need. So I just appreciate the administration working with Mr. Brooks on this, and hope that my colleagues will support it.
Thank you. Mr. Weddleton.
Well, thanks. So a question for staff. This might be Mr. Schutte, or whoever. So I look at this and I kind of understand what's going on, but there, we got Seahaw's property, which we know they're actively developing, and then the trailer court, I believe the owner has been planning a total redevelopment there for some time. But there's a large apartment building, right, where Wilson hits Chugach Way, just on the north side. And are they excited about being called a deteriorated property? Have you talked to them?
Through the chair, Chris Schutte, Director of Economic and Community Development. Just a clarification, Mr. Weddleton, this is a deteriorated area which is different from a deteriorated property. And so I can't answer your question about their level of excitement. But what I can say is that by designating this area as deteriorated, it does present an opportunity for property owners within and directly adjacent to, according to the code, apply for tax incentives as a deteriorated property, but then starts the two-step process of coming in and proving the but-for test in the deteriorated property application. So it's a very long-winded way of saying I don't know how excited the apartment building is, but this is to declare the area deteriorated, not an individual property.
If I could just follow briefly. And so, right, I think, if someone's trying to sell apartments in that apartment building and people go, oh, I don't want to be there, I hear it's a deteriorated area, it's kind of a negative thing. It's not negative for the people who are going to redevelop there because they get great benefits from it. So I don't know. It'd be nice if they were told this was happening. I mean, maybe they'd be thrilled, but they've recently put in a bunch of money there. They brought in some water lines and so on. I don't think they have an intent of tearing it down and rebuilding. So it's...
Through the chair, there wasn't really a question in there, but I think I understand what you're getting at, which is the nomenclature. And you're right, the nomenclature of declaring an area deteriorated certainly sounds pretty glum. But I will say that deteriorated area designation outside of the perception doesn't actually have a material impact on values of properties that are adjacent or even within the area. And because we've been asked that question in the past, we have a number of deteriorated areas declared in Midtown and downtown, and the question was asked, does that create an artificial drag on commercial real estate in or around those areas? And the answer from property appraisal has been resoundingly no.
Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Zolotel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Studi, can you talk a little bit about what this designation does for commercial property? We hear a lot about it allows the development of affordable housing, but what does it do, or what are the advantages for the businesses that are there or that could go into that area?
Thank you. Through the chair. So it's not specific to housing or non-housing, right? It's a tax tool designed to encourage investment in our deteriorated and blighted areas. So for area property owners who are looking to develop, whether it's residential, as you heard Cook Inlet describe, or some other product for the area, it gives them an additional tool to help make certain projects pencil that maybe otherwise would not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
Thanks. And the one thing that we have come to understand pretty clearly is that this kind of a designation and the benefits that come from it in our tax structure aren't substantive enough to cause a project to come or go, but layered in with many other tools can make a project worthy of investment by third parties who have capital free. But Mr. Weddleton, which neighborhood were you talking about specifically? I'm looking at attachment A if you have it, and I'm just trying to understand where you were referring to.
Sorry, it is, you're looking at that map on...
The one with all the colors on it.
You have colors? Well, they got colors. Oh.
Oh, yeah, no.
It's much more clear to me. Everything's black
A.
and white.
Attachment A.
It's, if you see Wilson Street Park,
yes.
okay, just to the west of that is Wilson Street. So if you go straight up Wilson Street, right where it hits the sea,
Gotcha.
where it's at Chugach Way,
Yep,
there's
okay.
an apartment building there. That's, I don't know how many units. It's not small.
Yep.
Do you know how many units there is? I would say 20 or more units in there.
Yeah, okay. And so, okay, since we're in debate, I think philosophically speaking, I would suggest that should a developer with means and a vision come through in there sooner than later and make a real investment, start clearing and start rebuilding, that the benefit will far outweigh the cost to the properties surrounding, that it will actually lift everyone as opposed to sink. But that does, of course, depend on action as opposed to just words, and so that's a real challenge.
Ms. Zolotel?
Thank you. Mr. Constant raises a question for me because it sounds like you'd have to go in and clear what is there, but that's not true, correct? You can revitalize what is there as well. Am I understanding that correctly? And we saw that example happen in Mountain View in the apartment complex behind the Boys and Girls Club. I just want to make sure I'm getting all the different projects right and that what's allowed.
Through the chair, excellent question. While the Marina Corina project you just referenced, it was not in a deteriorated area as defined by Title 12. It was a revitalization of a deteriorated property itself. But an actual project that's happening in front of our eyes in real time is on the corner of F Street and Fifth Avenue, where the deteriorated area that you approved earlier this year for that block, the Peach Investments block, is being demolished and, or not demolished, sorry, being gutted and reconstructed essentially in front of us. So it is technically a renovation project.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
Yeah, and maybe we didn't use the correct verb, but there are just some sections in there that are piles of debris, literally, that have to be cleared for anything to proceed. But I certainly wasn't suggesting just gentrification as opposed to some strategic way to make sure that individuals can actually afford to live there, but also not live in deterioration. So I think we share values, but my words were not precise enough.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Presberdia?
Yes.
That item is approved 11-0. The next item that we have before us is item 14J, ordinance number AO 2020-96, an omnibus ordinance of the Anchorage Assembly revising Anchorage Municipal Code Title 12 taxation by repealing...
Waive reading.
Thank you. Public testimony is now open. We have one individual to testify over the phone, Ms. Jane Dale.
Hello, this is Jane.
Hi, Ms. Dale. This is Felix Rivera. You are here with the Anchorage Assembly. We are on public testimony for AO 2020-96 regarding the revision of Anchorage Municipal Code Title 12 taxation. You have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Jane Dale. I'm the Executive Director for the Alaska Air Carriers Association, and my comments regard Ordinance 2020-96. AACA received this proposed ordinance on the 28th, just a few days ago, and it really hasn't been enough time for us to gather comments, compile those comments, and we ask that the Assembly consider postponing this until at least November 2020. At that time, I would like to come back and provide some comments, but at this time, we just haven't had enough time. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. That concludes our phone testimony. Welcome. If you can turn it on, please. Thanks.
Can you hear me? Great. Thank you, William Topol. I'm a property owner here in East Anchorage. As the phone-in testifier mentioned, not enough time has been given to the public on this. I own a single-family dwelling. How's this going to affect me? I know you can't answer my question because we're testifying, but maybe we can discuss this. But I think the bottom line is need to postpone this, give more information to the public on this. There's no information out there on this yet, unless I'm aware of. It just happened a few minutes ago. How's that going to affect my real property assessment and taxation? I think you need to have some more time and more information out to the public, so I encourage you to postpone this, and please get information out to the public on this so we can make an intelligent decision ourselves, so we know how to testify before you on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome.
Good evening again, Assembly. Niall Williams, N-I-A-L is the spelling of the first name. In response to 2020-96, this is a 15-page bill. It just came off the press. We just got this put up in the back room for members that are here. I'm not sure how long it's been available online. However, for members that are here, this was just put out in the back room less than 1 hour ago. I would also say that the public has not had enough time to be able to put input on this bill and to be able to testify on it. Under Section 3, Part A, number 1, under the vehicles part, it speaks of taxation on vehicles, and it says, except for vehicles subject to tax, levy on motor vehicle registration, all vehicles propelled by other than, quote, human muscular power shall be taxable as personal property, including but not limited to automobiles, motorcycles, and aircraft. But hold on, it says, except aircraft subject to Chapter 12.08. So let's try and find that real quick. Doesn't even appear to go in order. Who knows where that is? Anyway, I'll tell y'all what the extra aircraft are. It's drones. Drone surveillance. I know, Forrest, it's real funny. It's hilarious. But to have drones outside our homes that can surveil us, when this municipality and this assembly would certainly be for surveillance for political correctness or against free speech. I personally had an interaction with you at the Black Lives Matter rally. I don't know if you remember, Mr. Forrest Dunbar.
If we can keep this on topic, please.
This is directly on topic.
It is not. Please keep it on topic.
I'll do that for another time. Anyway, let's go to the next thing on the list. Mobile homes. It says that they can tax your mobile homes. What else? I got 17 seconds left. Talks about all sorts of investigations. If you're not paying your taxes, they're going to take your properties away. They're going to tax everything from mobile homes to RVs. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Welcome. If you could. Yeah, thanks.
Sorry, my first time. Hello, you can start the timer. I'm not going to use it all. First of all, my name is Scott Sickinga, S-C-O-T-T, Sickinga, S-I-K-K-E-N-G-A. I've been a member here of Anchorage for about 6 years. I'm an aircraft mechanic and pilot. Anytime I hear the word omnibus, I think of trying to roll up a bunch of stuff into one thing, and it just kind of hits. I think this needs to maybe be tabled, parsed out, and then passed on individual smaller bits. We've seen what omnibus things do in a national level, and I think it sort of creates lose-lose situations for everyone. So I'm going to suggest as a member of Anchorage, maybe parse this thing out and make individual items that make it so it's easier to understand. Omnibus items it's just a way to sneak things in, or it just defies the trust of a lot of Anchorage. So that is all. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you later.
Thank you for your testimony. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony is closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to postpone until, what date's today? Sorry.
November 4th.
Well, I would go, I think, October 27.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Weddleton?
Actually, maybe I probably should have researched dates a little bit better. I think one thing is, we have a few amendments that I think are important, but broadly the reason to postpone is partly this aircraft thing. I mean, they have not heard. I called some a couple days ago, they had no clue. And they're, it's fairly significant as a multiple of what they've been paying, the increases here, so they should have time to discuss it. We also have a Merrifield Advisory Commission that I think it'd be worthwhile. Send it to them and say, what do they think? There may be, I mean, we're doing it by weight. Apparently it's done other places that way, or we're proposed to do it by weight, but there may be other ways too. And talking to a couple pilots, they were saying there's some issues with weight and so on that I just don't know. But I think the commission might, we could flesh this out some more. I don't understand that, I don't believe this is something that needs to be done right away. Mr. Slivka?
I can't get in the queue.
Through the chair, we could accept postponement to October 27th. It's kind of integrated into the camera project that's ongoing, so we'd like to try and get it done before the end of October.
Okay.
I was in the queue, though.
I'm done.
Okay. Thank you. So, Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Welton asked my question, so I appreciate that. But I did want to make a comment that folks are focusing right now on the portion that got the increase. Let's also remember this totally exempts from taxes. This is a huge tax break for people that own airplanes for personal use in Anchorage. And to correct something else, that it gets rid of taxes entirely for those airplanes. And for one of the people that spoke about mobile homes, which I care about a lot because manufactured home parks are very common in East Anchorage, where I represent, this exempts them from tax. It doesn't increase their tax, it actually gets rid of the tax on the home itself. The land is still taxed and the rent is still paid, but the item itself will no longer be taxed. So it's a huge benefit to a lot of folks in my district. So I am interested in seeing this pass, but I will also go along with a delay if it's not going to disrupt our plans. Thank you.
Thank you. So for, as an FYI, if any member wants to get in the queue, you have to let me know. So I have Mr. Constant, then Ms. Kennedy.
So the date, if the intent is to get it to the MAC, the Merrill-Field Advisory Commission, is arbitrary, and the only time they are planning to meet is the 5th of November, which is after, or no, maybe our calendar's not right. It says the first Thursday of November, so that's the 5th, but we don't meet on Wednesdays, or we do meet on a Wednesday, that Wednesday. So we could probably ask them to meet early. We're going to have to do some outreach to Merrill-Field if we're going to get them involved, because their next meeting is the day after our next meeting. Or not our first meeting in November, I should say.
Okay, well, what would the chair advise there? I mean, do you want to leave it at this point? I can check into that tomorrow or something. It shouldn't be hard.
Sorry, dealing with multiple things. Can you recap the conversation so I can offer advice?
So MAC, the Merrill-Field Advisory Commission, meets the first Thursday of November next. So there would have to be a special meeting if they wanted to call themselves to deal with this, if we're going to address this question in October. If it pushes too hard on the CAMA project, then I would advise we proceed. But, and then we can ask them to have a special meeting. But if not, it would argue to be November 17th.
So it's hard for me to offer advice. I'd need to ask the administration if November 17 is amenable.
Again, we would prefer earlier. I guess we would remind we've noticed 2 public sessions on work sessions on this topic going all the way back to July. So we've been talking about it for many, many months. And it is specific to the airplanes. It is the exact taxation schedule that it's used at Kenai, Soldotna already. So we have reached out to Merrill-Field, and the general manager there, Mr. Ralph Gibbs, has contacted all of the commercial operators there. So I think they are aware of it, and I guess I would just, to urge them to get together and provide their testimony to us. But we would like to get this done before the end of October if possible. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have 3 folks in the queue, so I'd like to hear from 3 folks before we change any motions. So I have Ms. Kennedy, Ms. Allard, then Ms. Zolotel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was hoping for a postponement till like the 4th of November. I think the October postponement is the least we could do. But I will say that I know I have an amendment that's not ready yet, so I would appreciate the postponement. And I also think that the public has to be really aware of what this does, because one of the things in this ordinance is, though there are certainly some exemptions that are worthy of being considered, everything is pretty much tax neutral, which means the tax burden just gets shifted to others who may be very unaware of the potential for that. So even though that some of the groups have been notified that are directly impacted to a benefit for the most part in some of what's in here, there are certainly people that are indirectly negatively impacted, and I want to make sure we have the opportunity for as many people as possible to know about those kinds of ramifications. So I would be also amenable to maybe even extending it out to the November date. Thank you.
Ms. Allard?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that we've had work sessions on this, and because of that, I believe we could get whatever amendments Ms. Kennedy is looking at getting in, but I think we need to get this moving because it does benefit quite a few people. So I would encourage my colleagues to look at sooner than later and not further as a postponement. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Zolotel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for Mr. Slivka. Would the administration have an issue if this were bifurcated, taking out the aircraft and leaving the remaining provisions so that the stress on doing the alterations for the CAMA system would be, there'd be 2 down, but one to go.
I think we wouldn't have an objection if you wanted to bifurcate the airplanes and push it out a little bit more.
Thank you. So I have 2 more folks, and then I want us to get to a motion. So Mr. Dunbar?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I agree with Ms. Allard that we should do it sooner rather than later, though for a slightly different reason. I just remind my colleagues, and I think everybody knows this, but we are entering our budget cycle. The 2 meetings in November tend to be extremely intense, long meetings. So I would like to try to get this knocked out in October if at all possible. And perhaps I think you may have already said this, but perhaps the Merrill Field folks would be willing to do a special meeting in October. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
Yeah, thanks. And officially, this item was introduced to us on August 25th, so this has been out for the public since a long time.
Thank you. Okay, so right now we have a motion on the floor to postpone this to October 27th. Is there a new motion? Okay, not hearing any, then we're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute break, and then we will come back to that motion to postpone to October 27th. And this break is for technological reasons. Apologies. go ahead and get back to business. Thanks for the patience. Mr. Constant?
Thank you. To the members, Mr. Weddleton, I did hear from the vice chair of the Merrifield Airport Advisory Commission, and they said that they could, in fact, meet before the 28th of this month. And so they would pull together a meeting should they be asked.
Well, thanks for checking. That was great.
Is there any other discussion on this motion that we have before? So as a reminder, this is motion to postpone this action on this item to October 27th. Hearing nothing else, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. LaFrance? Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Perez-Verdia? Mr. Perez-Verdia?
That motion is approved 9-0, so that'll be back before us on October 27th. Next, we have item 14K, ordinance number EO 2020-98, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code, section 6.50.060 to modify the MOA Trust Fund annual dividend calculation methodology.
Waive reading.
Thank you. Public testimony is now open on this item. We don't have anyone on the phone. Would anyone like to testify? Welcome.
Hi, my name is Rosa Mealy. I'm actually, in regards to this, where it's talking about expanding the real estate investment of the muni here, it never lists what these funds are going to be used for, so I guess it's more so questions that we have, because it lists to say how it's going, the average asset balance associated with it, and quarterly, and all of how they're going to, calculate it, but it never says what it's going to be used for. It just makes reference to the real estate investment. So in regards to what we were talking about the other night for the hotels that you're trying to purchase, for the homeless housing, is this something that you guys were considering to use for that? There would be no need then to create a shortfall in the first responder payroll funds to buy these hotels if you guys actually have money coming in that says it's going to be double what it was. So why would we purposely rob from Peter to pay Paul if there are other funds that could be used? And it just says, it lists section 6.50.030, what's authorized under that section to be used as investment funds, but it never actually lists the section anywhere on the website. So maybe if this information could be made public, or we can be pointed in the right direction as to what is authorized under there. And this way, the public has knowledge of how these funds are going to be used, being that the city has to be transparent with us. And if you have funds that could be allocated to the project that you guys are trying to push through, let's not hurt the balanced budget that Weddleton pointed out to us the last meeting. When we talked to him, he said you guys have a balanced budget and 1 year savings. So if you guys aren't using those funds to be able to pay for this hotel project, then really how important on the priority list is it? And if you have other funds that can actually cover this, then let's help the American people, because these CARES funds that are coming are tax money paid by hardworking people. So let's help those hardworking people get back on their, or at least survive before they can get on their feet, because the mandates that are still in place by the mayor don't help people operate at full capacity and make the income that they need. So if there's other funds to be able to take care of this, why not try to help the American people with the CARES funds money that was given to help them?
Thank you for your testimony. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Welcome.
Good evening, Assembly. Thank you for the opportunity. Niall Williams, first name Nial. In response to this ordinance, following up with what the young lady just said, 2020-98. Now again, we were handed just over, I would say about 160 pages of documents less than an hour and 20 minutes ago, and they expect the public to go through everything and be able to comment sufficiently. Obviously, this affects the public process. So going forward to Part D under Section 2, it states in here that 4.5% taxation will be applied to homes. It's going to be additional property taxes, and they're going to put it into a fund, an endowment fund. And this endowment fund will seek to repatriate money from existing homeowners stealing out of their mortgage and out of their net worth, and then it's going to put it into an endowment that this assembly body in the municipality of Anchorage is criminally conspiring to steal money from its citizens. There is no limit on, if we pass this, how much taxes they will be able to steal out of your homes. I mean, imagine you buy a home, you pay in, I don't know when y'all bought.
Mr.
But
Chair,
if you bought
point of order.
recently,
This ordinance does not relate to property taxes. This testimony is not germane. And I apologize, it's based on a total misunderstanding of what the ordinance does, but his testimony is not germane to this ordinance.
Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and restart your time. If you could keep your comments on topic, please.
well, that exactly goes to my point, Mr. Dunbar and Mr. Chairperson Rivera. The public is not given sufficient time to be able to read the documents. I mean, literally, it's still warm from the Xerox machine. I mean, nothing less than a move to postpone this. And further, any meetings that were done under closed session or under Zoom should be invalidated. Any work sessions that are performed outside of the view of the public, where they are able to actually physically come to the room and be able to touch the paperwork and testify about it, nothing less than that is a sufficient participation in the public process, as is guaranteed to us by this municipal's charter. Y'all are acting in violation to your own agreements. This is what we're trying to hold you accountable for at this time. I mean, I know there's some people that are paying attention. Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Thank you, Ms. Allard. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Rivera.
I have a question for you from Ms. Allard.
Thank you, Chair, but it's more of a statement, if that's okay. I wanted to explain to you that we are going to correct and we are going to have the hard copies up in the future.
Thank
but
you.
I also wanted to let you know that not only has this been up on our assembly page, but I also shared this information on my personal assembly page for myself on Facebook, and I also showed it on another social media outlet. So we will correct it in the future. Thanks.
We do appreciate that, Ms. Allard. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony is closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this item? Mr. Weddleton.
Well, I think just briefly, in fairness to one of the speakers, if Mr. Backenstein or someone could say, or Mr. Slivka, where does this money go?
Through the chair, Alex Slivka, Chief Fiscal Officer. So what this does, this is the MOA Trust, which, as many people are aware, was originally funded by the sale of the telephone utility back in 1999, 98 and 99. And what we're doing is we're putting additional money in, proceeds from the sale of the ML&P utility. And all this document does is really rebase how we pay the dividend. This is not in any way, shape, or form a taxation on anybody. And specific to the point that was raised earlier, We are expanding our ability to invest in real estate. The type of investments we can make are ones that are professionally managed and that are diversified, and that nothing that really is invested in this fund has anything to do with local real estate at all.
Can I follow up just briefly?
Yeah, go ahead.
And I think to further that a little bit, the money available when we agreed to sell MLMP, they were required to put the bulk of the money into either paying off bonds or going into this savings account. And the savings account is essentially like the permanent fund is for the state, sadly, much smaller. And the money is used for general government so we can do things at lower taxes. So it's a good thing, and it's a great use. I mean, that's what the MLMP monies were for, according to the ballot that we all voted on. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Constant.
Thank you. And these funds aren't fungible for us this year. This is based on an investment that is happening towards the end of this year in which returns come next year. And I hesitate to do this, but I just have to speak these words. We made a purchase or we're in the process of making a purchase to ensure the health and safety of the homeless community in our town. And as far as I see in all directions around me, homeless individuals in this town, by and large, are Americans.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. LaFrance? Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy? Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Perez-Verdia?
That item is approved 9-0. Next, we have item 14L, ordinance number AO 2020-93, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code 21.01.090, transitional provisions, AMC 21.07.080G.2, refuse collection, AMC 21.08.070E, unit lot subdivisions, AMC 21.11.050A, table of allowed uses, AMC 21.11.070G, standards for urban design amenities, AMC 21.13.040B, overheight buildings and Anchorage Municipal Code of Regulations, 21.40.001, banned uses permitted by regulation in order to make technical corrections and address unintended consequences with respect to downtown Anchorage in Title 21. Public testimony is now open on this item. Thanks. We don't have anyone signed up to testify over the phone. We'll go ahead and do in-person testimony. Would anyone like to testify? Welcome.
Niall Williams, first name is spelled Nial. So again, thank you, Assemblyperson Allard, and to the clerk. I know there's a lot of legislation being shoved down the throats of the electorate, and it's difficult to keep up with it. So I wanted to give a visual demonstration as to the amount of paperwork that we were given, just so it can be clear to the community. Now I'm going to look for 2020-93.
I'm going to go ahead and pause your time. I'm going to ask in the future if you could be prepared to testify. Thank you.
I thought it was clear to give the public a demonstration as to how much of a clown show this is. The public moves to invalidate any works that were begun during closed periods or closed sessions. Once again, the public process is being restricted. People are being censored. We are told to stay on topic repeatedly. However, the thing is, everything's interlinked. It all lays on top of one another. That's part of the criminal conspiracy that is going on in this municipality. You're shell gaming around money through the CARES Act, voting against our will.
I'm going to go ahead and pause your time. I'm going to ask you to stay on topic, sir.
And again, the censorship comes. Freedom of speech is freedom of speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony is closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Constant.
Thank you, Mr. Schutte. My memory is failing me right now. If we started this project in November, October of last year, when your team first approached me, it was a long time ago. So this project has been ongoing, and it's the first or second, this is the second step in the major revision of the downtown code revision process. And this is just a conforming ordinance that allows some of the technical items that were found to be out of alignment with the actual function of our buildings and downtown. And so I strongly recommend that you pass this, and this project has been ongoing since long before COVID. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, that's essentially correct.
Thank you. Mr. Weddleton.
All right, thanks. The Community and Economic Development Committee reviewed this on September 24th, and we recommended approval.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. LaFrance? Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Presbydia?
That item is approved 9-0. That completes our regular business. Next, we have final audience participation. Let me just read my thing. So as a reminder, if you spoke during the initial audience participation, which in this case would have been on Tuesday, you cannot speak again during this final audience participation. For audience participation, please direct your comments to the assembly or the chair and not to anyone personally. Personal attacks are not appropriate. I will, as chair, work to maintain decorum at this meeting and ask for your assistance. Welcome. It's the yellow. There you go.
All right, we're on. Oh, thank you. First off, Dustin Sherman. Second, I want to thank you guys for being here on a Thursday. I know normally you guys would be here on Tuesday. I was actually here Tuesday and didn't get a chance to do this then, so I'm doing it now. I want to tell you a little bit about myself real quick before I get into it, but I was raised in a small town in Colorado. I was raised in a family, raised by my grandparents in a family that we were foster care. The reason I'm going to bring this up is because we had all kinds of different diversity in the foster care system in Colorado. We had Hispanics, we had African Americans, we had Asian Americans. I was brought up to see no color. And the reason that this is relevant is with me getting involved a little bit more in the city government, a little bit more in the political process here in Anchorage, there's some things that happened during that 5 days of testimony with the purchase of the building when everybody showed up and testified that kind of appalled me. I went back and I was watching some of the videos, and there were some statements that I feel was extremely inflammatory towards some of those people. And I'm here to kind of give my testimony on that, I guess. So one thing that I've learned in my lifetime, and this is growing up and working in the public eye, is to be the change, you have to see the change, you have to be the change. I mean that. To be kind to people and to show them exactly what the human spirit's about. Now when I say that, there were some comments that were made by several members of this body that really upset me. And one of them was the fact that some people think that there's systemic racism. I don't see that. I see the good in everybody. I see the good in everybody that's out here. So those members that did mention systemic racism, what I would have to ask you is, if that's the case, are you willing to step down and give your seat to somebody that's an Asian American, that's a Native American, that's a Native Alaskan, that is African American, you name it. I look across this body and I see nothing but white people. I hate to say that, and that really disturbs me. I lived in San Francisco. I literally lived in that area, so I've seen the diversity that's there. I know the diversity that's here in Anchorage, It upsets me to hear those comments, and then I look across the members of the assembly, and this is what I see. So to those members who mentioned that, would you be willing to step down? I'm not going to mention names, but that really does affect me. It upsets me to my core. Thank you.
Thank you for participating. Would anyone else like to participate? Sir, so sir, as you're coming up, you cannot participate again. You participated in initial audience participation.
Understood. Thank you, Felix.
Thank you, just as a
I
reminder.
was just grabbing my pen.
Great.
Mr. Sherman?
Oh, apologies. Ms. Allard?
Sorry, I can't get in queue on my little thingy.
Go ahead.
Mr. Sherman, can you come up here for a second? I just want to clarify a few things. I adamantly appreciate your testimony, but I'm going to say something about the body that's sitting up here. We have natives, we have Hispanics, we have LGBTQ, we have all different races up here. So even though our skin color might appear to be white, we're a very diverse group of individuals, and I just want to make that clear about that comment.
Can I answer that real quick with a question of my, or a comment of my own?
Briefly, sure.
We are in Anchorage, Alaska, one of the most diverse places in the world. To hear that, where we have people that are coming over from different countries, escaping the things that's happening to them, and for those comments to be put out in the public eye like that from this body, with exactly what you were stating, really, it doesn't make the body look very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weddleton, was this a question?
Well, maybe not quite, but to embellish on that, and it's because this is an important point. And I just say to anyone listening that we don't decide who's up here. It's decided by who runs and voters. And in the last 2 years, we had at least 3 assembly seats open with no opposition. I ran unopposed, Forrest ran unopposed, Chris ran unopposed, and people should be running.
I agree with that, 100%. I agree with that. But I also feel that you guys could probably make a change in that yourself. It's your responsibilities.
Thank you.
That's my question.
Thank you for participating.
Just
Mr.
quick.
Constant.
Thank you. Hey, sir. I thank you for your comments about kindness, and I assure you it's very hard sometimes because we, like you, are just people. And it's a fallible process to be here. It is hard because we are just people like you. And but to your main point, I've worked so hard in the last 10 years, and the voters approved in my district, which is the most diverse district in this town, a new seat on the assembly, that as soon as the census is done, we will have another seat that's available, and I'm working really hard to recruit an Alaska Native or an African American person to stand with me, and then I will get out of the way, because I hear what you say, and I actually agree, and I've worked hard, and I believe in what you say, and we should, in fact, be recruiting people to be more representative of our community. And so there are seats coming open, and we need you to sign up.
You know, I thank you for saying that, Mr. Constant. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
It's just, I think that with the diversity here in this city, maybe there needs to be more seats opened up. I don't know. But I think that there needs to be a lot more representation than what we have.
Thank you. Thank you for participating. Welcome.
Cassie Fretwell, and I just want to say it is unfair that members cannot speak at
Could you lower the mic, please? It's hard to hear you.
Sure.
Thanks.
That members cannot speak at the beginning and end of meetings, and that the technical audio and visual of the recordings of the meetings that appear on YouTube are being altered, as I have video on my phone that shows different footage. This violates the laws regarding preservation of these meetings. And who has time to read all this when they come up? Things that are being passed should be written in 50 to 75 words or less and being able to be understood by a 5th grader. I mean, this stuff is really complex, and a lot of people aren't up to this, as you know, that the Anchorage School District has a 19% pass rate on reading right now. Thank you.
Thank you for participating. Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Rosa Mealy. My testimony is in regards to two different things. One, it's the majority of the citizens don't want you to purposely create a shortfall by using the first responder payroll funds to buy the homeless hotels. Like I said earlier, that's robbing from Peter to pay Paul. The majority of the citizens don't want you to build a projects in Anchorage. I'm from South Central LA, and I saw firsthand what the projects do. And in LA, with the authorities and the officials actually building or housing all of the homeless downtown, created Skid Row. Do you want a Skid Row in Anchorage by buying those homeless hotels, enabling these addicts to continue doing what they're doing? And if they in fact have mental disabilities, why wouldn't you hand them over to the proper people that could take care of them instead of enabling the issues? You're just going to end up with the Skid Row here. So instead, you should properly allocate those funds to help hardworking Americans, being that those funds came from hardworking Americans, taxpayers, people that actually contribute to society. Weddleton, at the last assembly, we confronted him outside and we asked him a bunch of questions. He said, so my second thing is, if you're not going to allocate these funds to help business owners try to survive, because at this point it's not even thrive, it's just trying to survive. People aren't making money, people can't make ends meet. That's why they pulled their kids from the Anchorage School District, because they can't afford to buy food, let alone pay for Wi-Fi for distance learning, because nobody can operate at full capacity. So my second thing is, if you're not going to help business owners, if you're not going to help businesses, the backbone of America, get through this, then why don't you remove the tyrannical mandates? Now, Weddleton mentioned that you guys are afraid, and this is why he supports the mandates, because of what happened in New York will happen here. Well, are you planning to put COVID recovering patients into nursing homes? Because that's how because Cuomo did that, that's how they ended up with the high death and infection rate. It's not because people were out and about trying to do life and live life as free Americans. It's because they stuck all of these COVID patients into nursing homes. So nursing home deaths account for about 40% of US COVID deaths. Unless you guys are planning to do that here and kill a bunch of grandparents, then you, by not removing these tyrannical mandates, are actually sentencing the American people to death. Suicide rates are up. People can't afford to pay for food to have their family survive. If you keep these mandates in place, you are sentencing your constituents to death.
Thank you for participating. Would anyone else like to participate? Come on up, sir. Welcome.
Hello, Assembly. This is my first time, second time tonight speaking with you guys. And I, too, am deeply concerned with the choices made with the CARES Act money. I actually don't even know how it's legal that we were able to take money that was appropriated for the ambulance and, give me a second, first responders, and somehow or another just move it around like that. I understand that it's very normal to move money around, and that's your guys' job, and I appreciate and I honor that. But it's just an act with money. Like, I made a list while I was sitting in the rows over there of things that the CARE funding should be going to. It should be going to hospital infrastructure. It should be going to ventilators. It should be going to emergency funding for an outbreak. I don't understand how homeless hotels make any sense at all. And just playing little games with the money isn't valid. Like, you guys need to think about this. Like, I'm surprised the lawyers aren't smelling blood in the water and going after this. Like, it's a perfect public case of money laundering. And I don't know how it's happening. And it saddens me as an Anchorage citizen to see it happening. I think you guys are better than that. Here's some other ingredients for mayhem. Shut down churches. That's a good way to make things just go terrible. Force schools to shut down. My wife is a children's minister, and she has to work. She's talking with these kids in Penland Park who are just like, they want to go to school for the first time in their life, and it's shut down. Now you got those kids all running around making mayhem. These mandates are not helping. We've got to find a more balanced approach. We understand there's a virus. We are responsible citizens, and we can do the right thing. We will wear masks if we need to wear masks. I wore one today, one of the first times I ever did. I'll follow the rules. And I think that Americans, and I think that Anchorage citizens are some of the most strongest people in America. Like, they're really cool people and really strong people, and I think they're capable of making these choices. We don't need to make these choices for them. Let's lift these restrictions. I'm going to run out of time. I wish I had more.
Thank you. I have a question for you, sir. Sir. Thanks. Mr. Weddleton?
Well, I guess I'm wandering into Knott's questions, right? But thank you for coming. And I got to say, that whole thing, one thing, money laundering, you usually try to hide, and we, of course, did it all completely public and in documents, so it's a little different. But it is the use of CARES Act funding, the way it comes about, it is all very unusual. And it is huge documents of what it can be used for and how. Some of it's contradictory. It comes from the federal government, and we think it's weird too. But it's just, we're following the rules the best they have to use it the best we can to help the city. And if it looks weird, it comes down to us from the federal government. And I think they were working very late at night.
I was at the park the other day, and I saw a sign that said, "Don't feed the ducks." And I think that's what's going to happen with this homeless hotel idea. It's just going to make the problem worse.
I have another question for you from Mr. Constant.
Go ahead.
Actually, comments. Two things. You mentioned Penland Park, and that just hits my heart so hard because you're 100% right. You have neighborhoods that are, I had a walk today with someone who is kind of a king of industry. He leads a major industry in this town, and he was telling me how hard it is for him to educate his kids at their home up on the hill. And then I think of the parents in Penland Park and the hard work that they have to do to try to educate their children. And so you hit on exactly the thread of it, the core of the work that I think is the important work of the city. And the second thing you said is you wish you had more time. And some of your friends here have discovered we meet twice a month. And so your city government is here for you. The doors now are open. If not, it streams online. And you can call to get on the phone if you want to talk on any of the items. And they're published 2 weeks in advance and a week in advance. So we are here for you, and we wish you to come back.
And I thank you for the opportunity to talk. Like, that's such a neat opportunity for me to talk right with the council. I appreciate that. I don't want to abuse that privilege, as I think sometimes does happen. But I do appreciate it, and I do appreciate what you guys are doing. I just think that we need to, I know there might be technical ways to use the CARE money that you can, but is it an ethical way? And I believe it is not. And I believe I'm not alone in that.
Thank you. Thank you for participating.
Thank you.
Welcome, sir. Coming up.
Good evening. This is my third time up here again, so William Topol. Just want to comment on some current events here. As you probably heard this week, Anchorage School District is considering not opening up for in-class operations maybe for the rest of the semester. The Anchorage School District budget is part of the city budget, and it's part of my tax bill too. Now, I don't mind paying some taxes for the school district. I want to see our kids educated. But as long as the schools are closed primarily, teachers are only working an hour for direct instruction, maybe a few hours to grade papers or grade stuff online. As long as our schools are going to be closed like this. They're being relatively unused. I'd really like this body to consider some sort of property tax rebate for a portion of the time that they are being closed. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question for you, sir, from Ms. Allard.
Bill, can you come back up?
I'm sorry, I'm a little hard of hearing.
That's okay. So I pulled my kids out of the ASD. My kids now go to a private school. Not every parent can do that. And I want
Right.
to tell you right now, the schools being closed have mentally impacted my children, and I know they've impacted other kids. I understand that some of the teachers are scared to teach, but I'm going to make this comment to you, and I hope you know where I stand, and so does the rest of the public. We have first responders, we have assembly members, we have federal, muni, and state employees. We have restaurant workers, we have retail workers, we have trail workers, all at work. So for the school district and the unions to pull the card that it's not safe to teach our children, I'm not in agreement with. So thank you for your testimony, and you definitely have my support that the ASD should be open.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to participate? Okay, seeing no one, we're going to go ahead and move on to assembly comments. I will go ahead and start over here with Ms. Allard.
I have nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson.
No comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. LaFrance. Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No comment this evening.
Ms. Quinn-Davidson.
Nothing for me, thanks.
Mr. Constant.
Nothing, thank you.
Ms. Kennedy. Mr. Perez-Verdia. Ms. Zolotel.
No comment, thank you.
Mr. Weddleton.
Well, geez, I have things to say. So, we've heard a lot today about, getting access to the information. I think Mr. Constant helped out there and said, this stuff is posted online. First, we introduce things at least 10 days, so usually 2 weeks minimum before we address it. And you can get it online, you can read it, you have time to call us or talk to your friends, whatever, gather information. Many of those things is over a month later. We looked at some stuff today that we talked about, we started working on in July. And you should get involved with your community councils, because your community councils get this information, and you will be meeting people who have dealt with this stuff for years. They know how to read it, they know how to understand it, they know how it's connected to other parts of code. We've heard it's all layered on top of each other, and often it is. And at your community councils, you'll mix with people who have done this for years and know how this stuff goes. Mr. Sherman is newly on the board of the Abbott Loop Community Council, and I think he's going to bring great energy and knowledge, and he will also learn a tremendous amount from the people on that community council. That's where you guys can start. These things are sent to the community councils for their views before we deal with them, and it is unfortunate how rarely we hear from the community councils on these items. So I hope you'll get involved in your community councils. Thank you.
Mr. Constant.
Yeah, thank you. Earlier I spoke of the Merrill-Field Advisory Airport Council. It is not. I misspoke. It is in fact the Municipal Airport Advisory Council. And so I just mislabeled them, and they're a broader mission than just my neighborhood.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
We're adjourned.